right, so are you guys ready? So we get this show on the road. Get this show on the road. Okay, so you guys did go to lecture, or you didn't go to lecture, or you okay? So like, what's the percentage now? What's the percentage of attendance? Percentage? 10%? 15? I don't know. I don't know.
Like you think more people will come to lecture for structures of consciousness
Okay.
you think so, but
Wow.
it's not the case.
Okay, so we're gonna be talking about pharyngeal arches, right? Right here. So we're gonna be looking at pharyngeal arches. Okay, so I'm just kind of draw out where we're gonna begin the story from. Okay, so this is what we're actually looking at today, right? So these are the pharyngeal, butchering these names, pharyngeal arches. All right. So essentially, all right, we are looking at these bumps, right? So you guys are gonna have fun today looking at bumps, all right? So we're gonna try to figure out how we came, like how they came about. So we're gonna look at how we formed these, how we formed them, all right? And we're gonna be looking at what is inside of these bumps, right? Because why are we focusing on them? There must be something inside. It's like a package or something. Has to be something inside. All right, then we'll be looking at maybe some of their kind of like maybe functional, kind of like a role, or like what's their purpose, kind of. Right. So I guess beginning off, I guess it'll be good just to point out. Okay, so you guys already know what we're looking at here. So this is embryo, right? All right. And so what part would this be then? So what part would this be then? What part would this be? Okay, so this is the head. Okay, how about this? What do you think that's going to be? Okay. See? You guys didn't go to lecture, but you know some stuff. Okay.
It looks like
Okay. Okay, then this will be like the lower part, right? Right? It'll be like the lower part, right? Okay, the trunk, the lower part, right? Okay, now I want to point out some things here. Okay, so now you guys remember the neural tube, right? So what's going to happen here is that that neural tube towards the head region is actually going to further differentiate, and then you're going to get your brain and stuff like that. But that neural tube is actually going to, so this whole structure here, I want to get you guys to know where this stuff is, where the action is happening. And if you can start to visualize where everything is happening, and it's going to become a lot easier for you. Okay, so we're going to see this is derived from the neural tube, right? So in this case, it's kind of like the spinal cord, right? So this is kind of like the spinal cord, like, let me get a pointer here or something. Okay, so here. So all of this will kind of be like the spinal cord, and this would just be kind of like maybe like the brain, the part that's gonna form like the brain, right? Right, maybe like here, maybe brain stem or something like that. Okay, so positionally, just look at where those pharyngeal arches are, because that's for, it's important to understand. Okay, look at the eyes. Okay, so we just said that this is eye. This is going to be eye, right? So just look at where these pharyngeal arches are. So they're in the head area, right? And behind it, or maybe near to it, you're gonna see some kind of neural tube thing or whatever there, right? So when you look at these pharyngeal arches, in terms of location, you want to be thinking about, okay, like your chin area, you know, your like throat area, kind of. That's where you want to kind of visualizing them to be located, right? Okay, so now I'm just gonna draw another structure in here, right? And we're gonna encounter this. So you're gonna encounter the pharyngeal arches in juxtaposition to that neural tube, right? So you just know kind of positionally where these stuff are located. Yeah.
Where did the pharyngeal arches come from?
Don't worry, man. You're jumping the gun, man. So just gonna take it easy. Take it easy, slow and steady. We'll get there. Okay, so now, so we're gonna suppose that somewhere around here, maybe here or so. Maybe like so. You would have like your gut tube, right? So we're gonna suppose that you're gonna have, so you're gonna have the neural tube. You're gonna have the gut tube, and then the pharyngeal arch is gonna be there, right? So just kind of have this relationship in your head as we go about. And also, this would be the heart. The heart will be somewhere here, or the future heart will be somewhere here, sticking out like so. All right. Okay, so now there are 5 pharyngeal arches, and I think it's good to just kind of point these out before we move on. So there are 5 pharyngeal arches, right? So the first one, so say this first one right here, so it actually is made up of 2 swellings. So it's made up of your maxillary swelling and like your mandibular swelling, right? And the second one, okay, this is the second arch. And then you're gonna have the third one, right? And you're gonna have the fourth one. And then now a little bit surprisingly, this is not gonna be 5, this is gonna be 6. So what happens is that the 5th one forms, but then it degenerates. It's like transient, so it comes and goes. So it's formed and then it disappears. All right? Okay, now before we can actually understand what we're looking at and how we got here, we want to just backtrack and just go back in time a little bit. We want to go back in time a little bit. All right? And we're going to go back in time to when we had the bilaminar embryo. And we're supposing that this cavity here, so this is a cavity, all right? This right here is a cavity, all right? And this would be your amniotic cavity, right? And this over here will be your yolk sac. You guys remember this stuff, right? Okay, so over here, this is going to be your epiblast. And these cells on the bottom here are going to be your hypoblast. So I can label this for you guys. So here, this is your epiblast cells, and these are your hypoblast cells. The hypoblast cells are the ones that line the yolk sac, right? Then you have the epiblast cells here, right? So what's going to happen is that, so this is the bilaminar embryo, right? This is bilaminar. All right. So what's going to happen is that those epiblast cells are going to start to migrate inward. All right. They're going to start migrating inward, and they're going to form the primitive streak. All right. Okay. So not to get you guys confused, right? So remember, when I kind of talked about the structure here. So when you look at this, all right, it's like, what the heck is this, right? So the way you want to think about this is that the key thing, the main thing you're focusing on. Let's see here. Okay, so this is what you're focusing on here. The embryo is coming from this part. All right, you see the part I just highlighted, right? That's where the embryo is coming from, right? The other stuff is just like, oh, it's just a cavity, you know, whatever. But this is where, like, right here, this is where that embryo is actually going to be coming from, right here. All this other stuff is just, you know, it's a distraction. All right. So remember, this is the key area, right? So that we're focusing on. Okay. So now, if we were to zoom in on here, right? If we were to zoom in on here, so we'll see something maybe like something like this. Right? So on top here would be what? What cavity is on top here? Okay, so the amniotic cavity. And what is on the bottom? Okay, so the yolk sac on the bottom. And what cell is this? What cell is this? Okay, so the epiblast. And how about what's on the bottom? Okay, hypoblast. Okay, now what happens is that these cells here, all right, these epiblast cells here are going to start to migrate inward like so. All right, they're gonna dive in. All right, and then as they dive in, they're gonna become your differentiate into the mesoderm, and then they're gonna display. Some of them are actually gonna enter in here, and they're gonna push aside this hypoblast. So they'll form your endoderm, your mesoderm, and then you'll have the ectoderm, because then that's 3 tissues. All right. So we're saying this is the amniotic cavity, right? And the yolk sac. So do you guys mind closing that door? Oh, Dolly, do you have the sign-in sheet by any chance? Okay, thank you, I appreciate it. Okay, so then from here, what we would get would be something like, okay, like, actually, I should probably just make this a little bit clearer. Okay. All right, so number 1, all right, so here on top we're going to get the ectoderm, right? Then on the bottom we're going to have what? The endoderm, right? Then in the middle here we're going to have the mesoderm, right? Now remember, on, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Just for clarification, so the notochord, it forms after the, or forms from the migration into
Exactly, yeah, the notochord is just part of like the part of the mesoderm once it goes in, like, that's how it's formed. Okay, so this is a kind of a weird view. The way you want to think about this is, let's say if you had, let me see, good example here. Okay, so yeah, that's a good example. Okay, so here goes a piece of paper. All right, it's a piece of paper. All right. So now, if I was looking at the side view of this paper, it will look like this. And that's like the side view. There's a sheet of paper, right? If I was looking at the side view of it, it will look like that, right? If I was looking at the top view, like if I was looking at that sheet of paper from the top, I'll be seeing this. But if I'm looking at it from the side, I'm seeing this, right? So what we're doing is, so we're taking a cross section and we're looking at that embryo from the side view. So all we're looking at now is the side. This is the side view. We're cutting the embryo and we're looking at it from the side view. All right, but if you were to look at it from the top view, like this, these cells here, the cells right here, right? These cells right here. If you were to literally just look at it from the top view like that, then what you would see is this. Right, so you would see something like this. Right, you would see these cells migrating in like this. Right? And then this is the primitive streak, right? So we're this view right here is basically if we take a cross section like that. You guys see that? I don't know if you guys can visualize that. Okay.
So that's the coronal section, basically.
So that's just the ectoderm, what we're seeing?
Yes, exactly. Well, it's epiblast. Right? Because the epiblast is the one that's migrating inward, right? You see that? Is anyone confused lost?
Isn't it just ectoderm, the top layer?
It's epiblast. Technically, you can kind of see it as ectoderm, but this is more correct to call it epiblast. All right. Okay, so the mesoderm. Okay, so here, first of all, so we have the nodal cord. All right. We got the mesoderm. Now there's 3 different types of mesoderms. Notice that the mesoderms. Okay, so look, we have the epiblast, right? It migrates in. We form the primitive streak. As those epiblast cells are migrating in, they are giving rise to the mesoderm. They're giving rise to the endoderm, right? And then the last thing that's left should be ectoderm, because then you have the 3 layers, right? So at this point here, this is the trilaminar embryo. Right? Okay. So there's 3 different kinds of mesoderm, right? There's paraxial, right? There is the intermediate, and then there's the lateral plate, right? Right? The paraxial is the one that's going to become the somites, right? Right, and then the somites can differentiate into, 3 other things, right? Okay, so did I lose anyone so far? Did I lose anyone so far? Okay, so I still got you guys. You guys are still here. That's good. Okay, so remember that on top here, this will still be the amniotic cavity, and on the bottom here, this will still be the yolk sac. All right, you guys see that because it looks like this. This is how it would look like, but we're just focusing on this area here. Remember, this is what we care about because that's where the embryo is coming from, right? Okay, so this is the thing, right? So when these epiblast cells are migrating, right, and they're giving rise to the endoderm and the mesoderm, so there's going to be some of these cells, some of the epiblast cells that are going to be migrating upward like so, right? These are the ones that are going to be giving rise to the notochord, all right, and your prechordal plate, right? So the notochord and the prechordal plate are important. Another structure that's going to be important is your, let's see, I believe it's the underlying endoderm. In this area, it's going to be an underlying endoderm that's also going to be, it's going to be important to us, right? Okay, so we got the trilaminar embryo. So we started off with the bilaminar embryo. We had the cells moving in, right, forming the primitive streak. Then now we got the trilaminar embryo. Now from here, what's going to happen is that this notochord is now going to induce the overlying ectoderm to become neural plate, right? So this notochord is now going to induce the overlying ectoderm to become neural plate. So what we're saying now is that at this point here, this here will now become neural plate, right? Why? Because of signals coming from the notochord. Signals are going to be coming from this notochord, and they're going to induce this the ectoderm above it to become neural plate. So this is gonna, that neural plate is gonna be giving rise to our neural tube. Remember, we talked about where this neural tube is, right? We said that you can visualize all this right here, right? All this stuff right here is coming from your neural tube, right? All this stuff right here is coming from your neural tube, like all this stuff. Okay, well, let's go back. Okay, so the notochord induces the ectoderm on top to become the neural plate. Okay, so let's try to see if we can just visualize this a little bit. So. Okay, so we're supposing here this is the notochord, right? And we're assuming that this here is the neural plate, right? So what happens is that once you have this neural plate being formed, right, then what's going to happen is that it's going to dip down. Like, imagine like you actually apply pressure like on here, and so that actually dips down. So if I were to redraw this now, so I would get something looking like this. Okay. So here, this is the neural plate, right? Right? So you see that it's dipping down, right? And then eventually what will happen is that these guys are going to fuse. These two ends here are going to fuse. So you'll just have okay. So you'll just have the ectoderm on top. Right? And then this is going to be your neural tube. All right, you guys see that?
Can you repeat that again? Did I fall off?
Okay, so what we're saying is, we're saying that this notochord is going to release some signals, right? Does anyone remember what the signals are? Okay, so cord and noggin. I can't remember, but I'm asking, so I don't know. Okay, so is it cord and noggin? Do you guys, cord and noggin? Okay, so cord and noggin. Then this is going to become the neural plate, right? Then once this becomes a neural plate, then what happens is that it's going to like invaginate. All right, so it's going to like it's going to dip down like this. All right, then the two ends of the ectoderm are going to kind of like fuse again. And so then you'll have the neural tube. So this part here is this right here. So now the neural tube is like inside where that like mesoderm is. So if I had to, okay, so if I had to like draw this better, so on the bottom here now, so not good colors. Okay, so so here we have, this is what? This is the neural tube, right? I made it a little bit too big, but okay, so this is the neural tube, right? Here is the notochord, right? You guys know what the notochord actually forms in the adult?
Nucleus pulposus.
That's right, nucleus pulposus. Right, so if you remember, was it the vertebral disc, right? So you would have, so if this is the vertebral disc, so you would have the annular fibrosis on the outside here, and then the nucleus pulposus would be like on the inside. Right? Okay, so this would be the endoderm right here. All right. This is the endoderm, ectoderm. You guys already know this is the mesoderm. This is paraxial, intermediate, lateral plate mesoderm, right? So this is paraxial, right? Intermediate, lateral plate mesoderm, and then this is the neural tube. Okay, yeah, go ahead. So the neural crest cells will actually like come off of like the neural tube, like so. So they will like just migrate. They come off like the neural tube, and then they. Well, I mean the neural tube does come from the ectoderm, so I mean, but they're generally seen as coming off of the neural tube. Yeah, coming off of the neural tube, and then they're going to be migrating and forming different structures. Right. Okay, so now we have this neural tube. All right. So we have the neural tube. Right. I'll show you again. Remember. Right. This is the neural tube. Like this whole thing here was the neural tube. But what you see is that we start to get some differentiation with that neural tube. It's not just a tube, because over here at this cephalic area, right, it's really huge, and then over here it's really thin. So it's like, okay, so how the heck is that happening, right? So it turns out that that's where this becomes important. So we have, remember, we have the nodal cord, we have the precordial plate, and then we have the underlying endoderm, right? So the nodal cord, so what was the nodal cord doing for us? Okay, so it's inducing formation of the neural plate and neural tube, right? So what happens is that these guys here, so talking about this precordial plate and this underlying endoderm, they're gonna help to form like more of that cephalic area, like more of like that your brain area, you know, like your brain kind of area. Right? That's what these guys are going to be doing for us. The nodal cord is, I guess you kind of say it's more so important for like the stuff before that, but these guys are going to be more important for like the cephalic. So maybe like this area over here. Right.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is the signal going up that nodal cord, or is nodal cord going throughout the plane? With the other picture you have?
So you said it's the nodal. So
primitive streak, are they all signals from nodal cord, or?
you said is the primitive streak the same as the nodal cord? Is that what you asked? Is the primitive streak?
Is the top arrow nodal cord?
Okay, so the top. Okay, so those arrows are showing how the epiblasts are moving. So they're moving. So these arrows are showing that these epiblast cells are actually going to be like moving in like so. But you know, I was trying to show how it looked like, not from the side view, but from the top view. You see what I'm saying? Okay. Does anyone have any questions on this? No? No? Okay, cool. Let me see here. Make sure I'm not missing anything. All right, so we're gonna take a different view of this. I'm gonna take a slightly different view of this. So I'm gonna see how much sense this makes to you guys. So, but we're gonna look at it from a different angle. Okay, so this is still gonna be our amniotic. Let me see here. This is still gonna be our amniotic cavity, and this is still gonna be the yolk sac. So the way we're gonna look at this, so let's just say maybe something like this, and maybe like so. Okay, so so we're gonna suppose that this right here is your ectoderm, right? And then we're gonna suppose that the structure right beneath it, so this right here, is your neural tube. So let's say this is the neural tube. And then of course down here, what do you guys think we're gonna have? What do you think we're gonna have down here? What are we gonna have down here? So we're gonna have the endoderm. Okay, so if I drew a line like this right below the neural tube, what do you think it's gonna be? It's gonna be the notochord, but it's a different view. All right, so this would be the notochord. Okay, then okay now, so this is the notochord. Now remember we said we had that precordal. What is that? The precordate plate. Right? Am I saying this right?
Chordal plate.
Okay, precordal. Yeah, it sounded weird. Okay, precordal plate, right? And then somewhere around here, I mean, I'm not 100% sure where it's at, but you're going to have the underlying endoderm, right? Okay, so now what we're seeing, okay, so number one, we're seeing the neural tube. Now, notice that the angle of this is a little bit different because what we were looking at before, right, it's kind of like, okay, so this is my pencil, and I'm showing it to you this way. Okay, so this right here is like, okay, so you're looking at it this way. So you're only seeing a point. But now it's like, I want you to look at it this way. You see what I'm saying? So we're looking at it now this way. Right, so instead of just seeing a point for the neural tube, we're seeing the whole elongation of the neural tube, right? Okay, so then from here, okay, so from here now, we're gonna start to have like differentiation of like that neural tube. So like what I was saying, so these guys here, the precordal plate and this underlying endoderm, they're gonna be helping to form a more kind of like cephalic structure out of that neural tube, right? Now, in Shaw's lecture, she has something about the nodal cord and how like it has it expresses Hox genes. She talks about how like it expresses Hox genes, and so these Hox genes are they're important in segmentation. Right, like specifying segmentation. So she, in her lecture, she was talking about how this nodal cord will actually specify the segmentation of your Robincephalon, and I'll get to that in a little bit. So, but okay, maybe we can. Okay, so now what I'm going to show you guys is just a depiction of the neural tube, but maybe in a little bit more differentiated way. So let's just say maybe something like so. Okay, so if we just suppose maybe this is kind of like more of the cephalic area, right? And if we say this is like the spinal cord, dang, I don't know why I always do that. I always do that. Okay, so this is spinal cord. Okay, so now we're gonna say this here is the forebrain. right? So this is your prosencephalon. I'm not going to spell this right. Prosencephalon. All right, and this is going to be your midbrain, right? Mesencephalon. And then you're going to have your hindbrain, right, which is your robincephalon, right? It's your hindbrain. Okay. Okay, so this your forebrain is divided into the, I'm forgetting which one comes first, but it will be the telencephalon and the diencephalon. So I can't remember which one comes first. Okay, T comes first. Okay, telencephalon and your diencephalon, right? Then you just have the midbrain, and then you're gonna have the hindbrain. Okay, now Shaw has these, so these are gonna be split into rhombomeres. All right, so she's saying that okay, so in her slide, it seems like it was only R1 to R7, but there's a source I was looking, it says it's R1 to R8, so there's 8 of them. Okay, so we're just gonna, so this midbrain now can be divided into 8 segments. Oh, hindbrain, sorry. Yeah, that's what I meant to say, I'm sorry. Okay, yeah, so this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever. We just call this 8. So these are our rhombomeres, right? Now, so from her lecture, or from the slides, her slides that she had, so she was saying that this your notochord, because it expresses Hox genes, these Hox genes are going to be important for the segmentation of these rhombomeres. I think she said up to R2, rhombomere 2, on the slide. Right. Okay, there is the rhombomere, the robincephalon can also be seen as the, is it am I getting this wrong? Okay, so I know one of them is mesencephalon. What was the other one? Myencephalon, that's right. Okay. Alright, so you guys are just gonna have to approximate, because I'm sure I'm spelling like 50% of them wrong. I'm pretty sure I am. Okay. So the major thing here is that we're seeing how, number one, we have this neural tube, right? And we're seeing how the notochord induced the formation of the neural tube, and then how the notochord, in addition to that precordial plate and the underlying ectoderm, is helping to get this kind of differentiation going on. And so when we go back here, now you can kind of see, oh, okay, now I kind of see how, we have the spinal cord going on here, and then how, this area, we got this bulges going on here, right? For the prosencephalon, mesencephalon, right? And then the robincephalon, right? For the hindbrain, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so remember now, another thing that we said was that we said that the neural crest cells were coming off of what? Or was it? Okay, so they're coming off of the neural tube. Well, all this is the neural tube, right? All that is the neural tube. So we would expect neural crest to be coming out from these, different locations. Now, another thing is, we also talked about this Paraxial Mesoderm, right? So notice that this Paraxial Mesoderm, it's very close to that neural tube. You see that? The Paraxial Mesoderm is very close to that neural tube. And in fact, so remember, the Paraxial Mesoderm is the same thing as a somite. So when you come back here, actually I think it will be better if I actually pull up the lecture slide. Okay, cool. Let me see if I can find something good here. Okay, so first of all, okay, we're looking at this. Right, we already talked about, okay, that's the heart, right? This is where you have the pharyngeal arches, right? You know, along the span of this whole thing, you would have that neural tube, and then you have the cephalic area, right? Okay, notice that these little indentations here are coming from your somites, right? And the somites were coming from, so these little indentations here are coming from the somites, and the somites were coming from the paraxial mesoderm, and the paraxial mesoderm was what? It was right beside the neural tube, right? It was right beside the neural tube. Right, hopefully you guys are seeing this. Okay, so now let's look at this. Okay, so they kind of filleted this embryo. Okay, so we're seeing that neural tube, right? This is the more of the cephalic area, what we just looked at, right? Now, these guys here are the somites, right? So, like so, these are the somites. Now, but it turns out that when as you get further, like up, the somites actually fuse. All right, they actually fuse, and they're called somitomeres. So instead of calling them somites, we call them somitomeres because they are actually fused together. All right. Let me see. There's another structure here. Give you guys another view of this. Yeah, go ahead.
There's the somites in the front, in the cornea.
Huh?
These are the somites in the cranial that fuse together, or is it all the somites in one?
So it's just okay. So the somites that are in like the head area, yeah, the ones that are in the head area. Okay. What else we got here? Okay, so I can talk about that.
Can I make a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so if the Hox genes are being expressed from the notochord up to R2, then what's responsible for the other differentiation into the other 8 segments?
I'm gonna be straight honest with you. Like, I have no idea. Like,
okay.
this lecture was different from the lecture they gave. So it was actually Dr. Baker that gave this lecture for us. And so, I mean, I wanted to listen to the lecture, like, you know, I looked all over to figure out, you know, what was doing all the specifications. I couldn't find anything. But, yeah, I'm just going off, like, strictly the things that you have written there. So, I mean, you guys can listen into the lecture and just kind of fill in, but I'm trying to give you guys maybe, like, overall idea of what's going on, right? Okay, so another thing to point out to you guys is that, so it turns out that when you're forming this neural tube, the ends are not going to be fused. So these ends, so the anterior end, also known as your anterior blastopore, right? And your, I believe it's posterior blastopore. So they're going to be open, right? So they're not going to be closed once this is forming. Right, but what happens is that the posterior one will close first, right? And then the anterior blastopore will close next. So this is actually important because you guys are gonna see a lot of different like abnormalities where you have like the improper closure of that posterior blastopore or the anterior blastopore. So this is very important for you guys too. So, you know, this is pretty important. You're going to see it in your SGL, I promise you. Have you guys already seen it? Yeah, you guys, oh yeah, this is upcoming SGL. This is upcoming SGL. Make sure I got everything. Okay, cool. All right. Okay, so coming back to the structure again. So we talked about how the neural tube forms and how we get the differentiation and stuff like that. So what happens is that you're going to have neural crest cells coming off of this neural tube, right? So you have neural crest cells, right? And it's not just localized to this head area. So if you're talking about this head area, so it'll be cranial, right? Neural crest cells, right? But then you can have like the the lower part, So there's trunk neural crest cells. So you would have these neural crest cells, and these neural crest cells are going to be migrating into different areas. So they can migrate into these. They can migrate into these pharyngeal arches, like so. And of course, they can migrate into other areas, the ones below here, other areas, and even up here, like so. But the key thing is that, let me see what I have here. So when you're looking at the pharyngeal arches, so you guys remember the rhombomer, right? What's the rhombomer? What's the rhombomer? One second, let me see. Okay, so Franklin. Are you hear what it said? Okay, that's right. You were late. That's right. Okay, Osmond. That's right. So the rhombomeres those are like the divisions of the hindbrain, right? So, but what did we call the hindbrain? So rhombencephalon, right? So that's the rhombencephalon. So rhombencephalon. So what two categories? So okay. So who's Morelli? Am I saying that right? Morel? Oh, dang. Who's Morel? Dang. I guess I didn't know your name this whole time. Wow. Okay, so Morel. Oh dang. Okay, so Morel. Okay, so what are the two major like groupings for the hindbrain? Sorry. Okay, so metacephalon and myelencephalon. Okay, good. So we're having these neural crest cells. They're breaking off from this neural tube and they're moving to different areas, right? So in the these cranial neural crest cells, all right, I'm just gonna give you guys an idea of some of the structures that they're gonna give rise to. All right, so they can give rise to cranial bones. Right? They can give rise to cranial bones. They can give rise to, let's see what I got here. So they can give rise to the odontoblasts. This is part of like teeth. So this is your teeth. This would be like the odontoblast right here. So it gives rise to your teeth. It can give rise to the cranial nerve ganglia. Right? Again, we're talking about the cranial neural crest cell. We're not talking about the trunk neural crest cell, right? So we want to differentiate between these two guys. Yeah.
Because I know it's like, it's only some cranial nerve ganglia, right? Like it's not all of them that come from cranial nerve crest.
That's a good question. I'm not 100% sure if it's all of them, but I know that it's involved in cranial nerve, like ganglia, like forming the cranial nerve. Some, I don't know if it's some or all, but I know it is
Is it the
involved.
ones that are associated with those like bronchial arches, or does it include like others?
See, I'm not sure if it includes the others. Does anyone know? Does anyone know? With, I'm not 100% sure on this one. That's a good question. This is a good question for Dr. Shaw.
Doesn't it also have to do with their innervation? It should be the branchial component.
I'll look at the lecture from like earlier today. Some of them
Yeah.
about trunk neurocrest.
Okay. And it, the thing is, like, it might not even be in the lecture. So, some of these, like, even like the divisions and stuff, I don't think that Dr. Shaw would be able to cover that stuff extensively with the 1 hour that she's allotted. So I mean, like, a question like this might be easier to just go to like Dr. Shaw and ask her specifically. I mean, but to what I know, I know that they are involved in forming the cranial nerve ganglia. I'm not sure if it's all or just some of them. Right? So the cranial nerve ganglia. Then they're also involved in the truncoconal septum. Okay, so the truncoconal septum is part of the. It's just part of the outflow tracts.
Can you rewrite that one?
Oh, dang. Okay, so I actually gotta pay attention to how I write. Okay. You guys are so demanding. Okay. Now you actually want me to spell this right. Truncoconal. Okay. Conal. Okay. Septum. I think this is right. The spelling. It does form the truncoconal septum, but I'm not sure if I'm spelling this right. Okay, so truncoconal septum. So this is part of the outflow tract of your heart. Yeah, remember where we saw the heart, right? So the heart is right here. All right. So you can imagine that some of these neurocrest cells, again, coming from, this is a cranial neurocrest cells, they are going to migrate in here somehow. Right? They're going to migrate in there. And then they're going to give rise to truncoconal septum. It's just the outflow tract. See if this is your heart. So from what I can recall, it's used in so here, this is your aorta, and this is your pulmonary artery. So the septum, there's a septum that forms, right? There's a septum that is used to separate the aorta and your pulmonary artery. There's a septum that actually forms down, and that's that septum, like, it's derived from the neurocrest cell. All right. And then let's see, boom, cranial neurocrest cells. Okay, so I can't forget about this. Also, okay, so they're gonna form your pharyngeal arch cartilage. All right, so they're gonna form the cartilage that you're gonna be seeing in those pharyngeal arches. Okay, so for the trunk neurocrest cells, where are they going to give rise to? So, number one, melanocytes. Melanocytes in your skin, right? They give pigmentation to your skin. Okay, key thing here, they're not going to give rise to cartilage. Right? The trunk neurocrest cells will not give rise to cartilage. And they could also give rise, to a bunch of other things, but I mean, just for the sake of time, they can give rise to the chromaffin cells in the adrenal medulla. Right? And you guys know the adrenal gland, right? So this is, yeah. Chromaffin? C-R-O. chromaffin. Then this is A. Chromaffin cells. So this is the kidney, right? This is the kidney. This is your adrenal gland, right? Sitting on top of the kidney. And then the adrenal gland is going to have a cortex and it's going to have a medulla. So the cortex is the outer part, and then the medulla is the inner part, and then the chromaffin cells are going to be in the adrenal medulla, right? So that means in this shaded area, right? Right? Okay, so that's that for the cranial neural crest cell. Let me see where we're gonna. Okay, so maybe focusing on these cranial bones. So this was a depiction that is in the slides.
Cranial bones, is that a skull?
Yes. It's not all. It's not forming every single like bone in your skull. It's forming like part of it. Okay, so the depiction in the slide. So like the bones that form the area I shaded in blue. So this part here, this is coming from your neural crest cells. Hmm? Yeah. And specifically, okay, so it's going to be your sphenoid bone. All right, sphenoid bone, your frontal bone, lacrimal bone, zygomatic bone, the maxilla, incisive mandible. There's probably one or two more. Right. But the neural crest cells are going to be giving rise to these. So is there anything else? Boom. Okay. Now, maybe just touching on one last thing here. Okay, so we have the rhombomeres, right? So it turns out that if you're looking at that first pharyngeal PA, so pharyngeal arch, right? So it turns out that the neural crest cells that are migrating into this first pharyngeal arch are coming from rhombomeres 1 and rhombomeres 2, right? Then for the second pharyngeal arch, the neural crest cells that are migrating in here are going to be coming from rhombomere 4. And then for the third one, third pharyngeal arch, it's going to be coming from your rhombomere 6 and 7. Right? Okay, so now, in addition to having components of the neural crest cells in these pharyngeal arches, we're going to also have components of that paraxial mesoderm. All right, so we have components of what? The neural crest cells, and we're going to have components of that paraxial mesoderm that are actually going to be also, it's going to be a component like of this. Right. Okay, so if I redrew this one more time. Okay. So if I drew these lines here, what would these lines represent? Somites, that's right. So it's representing somites. And what structure would be in here? Okay, so the heart. And these would be what? Pharyngeal arches. And around here would be the eye, right? So
this is before we form the lymphoids and everything.
yes, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna take a cross section through here, like so. All right, and then we're gonna look at that cross section. But before we do that, we just want to consider what we actually find in one of these um, these pharyngeal arches. So, how many pharyngeal arches do we have? How many? Huh? How many are there?
Five technically.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So there's
It's
5.
five.
First one's from R1 and R2, second one's from R4, third one is R5. What about 4 and 32?
Because
It's a little bit. I mean, for me, it's a little bit unclear from her slides. It was a bit unclear where it was coming from. Yeah, but if you look, you might be able to make out 4, but 5. I think 5 is a little bit hard to make out from her slides. It was very kind of. It was hard to make out from her slides. So.
If I could change the name, I would change
Okay, so you guys, let's see if we can come back. Let's see if we can come back. You're stealing my attention, man. Stealing my attention, you know? It's not good. Okay, so let's come back. I mean, it's good to have fun, but there's something more important. This is more important. Okay, but anyhow, okay, so we're gonna consider what exactly are we finding in these pharyngeal arches. So like, what exactly is in here? Okay, so the first thing is that we're gonna have what's known as your Ecto Mesenchyme. This Ecto Mesenchyme is the neural crest cell that broke off, became part of the mesenchyme, and now it's inside that pharyngeal arch. And then you're also gonna have your Paraxial Mesoderm, right? Which we called what? You guys remember what we called the Paraxial Mesoderm that's in the head area? Somitomeres. So it'd be the somitomeres. Right. Because it's somitomeres. Where did I keep this? It should be here. Okay. So now every one of these pharyngeal arches is going to have associated with it, you're going to have a nerve, a cranial nerve associated with it, right? You're going to have a cartilage associated with it, and you're going to have an artery associated with it, and then you're going to have muscle associated with it. So now, with respect to each of these pharyngeal arches, we have to consider what nerve innervates it, number one. Number two, what cartilage, it's forming in there, what artery, and then what muscle. Now, for the purposes of this lecture that Dr. Shah gave, she did not go into this, so I will not be talking about the artery. Right. And the last thing is that each of these pharyngeal arches are going to have an association with it, a cleft and a pouch. And we're gonna look at this shortly once we consider this division here. So you want to imagine, like we just literally just cut this like so, and then we take this part of the embryo, we flip it, and we look in the inside of it. Can you guys imagine that? Like you just cut it like that, and then you take it, and then you look at the inside like that. So that's what I'm getting ready to just depict. Okay, so first of all, let's try to get oriented a little bit here. Number one. So this right here, anyone want to take a guess what this is? That's the neural tube. Okay. How about this right here? What do you think that's going to be? That's right, it's the neural tube. Okay, look at this, right? If we cut this like so, right, number one, we said the neural tube would be going something like this, right? So that means that at this part here, we would expect to see a neural tube. At this part here, we expect to see a neural tube. You see that? And then the stuff in between is the pharyngeal arches, which you see in between right here. You guys see that? Do you see it? I mean, it's only good if you guys see it. If you don't see it, then it's not good. But okay, so now another thing you guys want to also, like, just to kind of help your orientation. So like, this is like around the mouth area, right? So you're gonna be seeing like the tongue. So okay, let me go back to the slides. I'll show you so that when you look at it, you're not gonna be confused, because I remember being confused with this. Right, so when you're thinking about these pharyngeal arches, you want to think about like the chin, the throat area. That's what you want to be thinking about. Okay, so here, can you guys now kind of see why this is being shown? Can you kind of see why a little bit? Maybe? No? Okay. Okay, so okay, yeah.
Is the fourth pouch the same as the fourth? Is the fourth pouch the same as the fourth pharyngeal arch?
It's no, it's not the same thing. So I'm gonna get into that in a little bit. I'm gonna get into the pouches and the clefts. I'll get into the pouches and the clefts in a little bit. Just in a little bit. Yeah. Okay, let's see. Trying to see if there's some good depictions here that I can just.
I'm not stuck about that picture. The first one you showed us.
Oh, okay, yeah. That's what I was trying to depict here. This little thing here. It looks like an alien. I didn't know. Okay. Okay, so okay, but I don't want to like jump too far. So you guys can see that this right here would be the pharyngeal arches, right? Can you guys see how this is a neural tube and how this would be the pharyngeal arches? Okay. Okay, now another thing is, so if this is the eyes, then we would say, okay, maybe around here we can have the mouth. Can we kind of like see that? Can we say that? Okay. And then now if we cut this open, what do we see in the mouth? See the tongue. You understand what I'm saying? So the tongue is going to be formed, you know, within. So it's going to be forming from like within here, this area here, then here. And you see, I mean, this might not be the best depiction, but I'll show you. I'll reference back again to the slide so you can see it. Okay, now, so we talked about the pouches and the clefts. So the first thing is here. Okay, so this is our pharyngeal arch number 1, right? So there was 2 swellings for this first pharyngeal arch. You guys remember what those swellings are? So it was the maxillary and the mandibular, right? For the second one, right? So it only has 1 swelling, right? So this is the second. This is the second pharyngeal arch. This is the third one. This is the fourth one.
What do you mean by swelling?
Okay, so that's good. Good point. Good point. Okay, so if we go back here, right? Do you see how this looks swollen?
Yeah.
Like so? These looks. What do these look like to you? They look plumpy, right? Swelling. I don't know what else to say. Okay, so
Yeah, she said we're gonna have a fifth one, and on the slide I saw where she was some like 6.
Yeah.
So we don't have fifth, but we have 6.
yeah, that's right. Okay, so yeah, were you gonna say something else?
So it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. 1 through 4.
Yeah.
6.
The fifth one is transient. The fifth one is transient. So it comes and then it goes. Yeah. Okay, so this swelling here, notice that this swelling here is still associated with this, right? You see that? This swelling here is still associated with this. So this would be what? Maxillary. And then this is what? The mandibular. And both of these are associated with the what? The first pharyngeal arch. You see that?
I didn't know there was a smaller one on top.
Yeah. I think it should be there. I think it should be there.
Oh, right.
Okay, so we go back. Okay, so we got the first arch, second arch, third arch, fourth arch. The fifth arch is transient, then it disappears, right? Then we have the sixth arch. Right? Okay, so now remember what we said here, right? So we said that when you're looking at these pharyngeal arches, number one, you have the Ecto Mesenchyme. So, what is the Ecto Mesenchyme? What is the Ecto Mesenchyme? Okay, so that's a neural crest that migrated into the area, right? Hmm?
Migrates ventrally, right? And somehow
Yes, that's right. That's exactly right. So you got the Ecto Mesenchyme, the Paraxial Mesoderm, which was the somatomeres. Remember that the somites at the head area are going to be fused, right? So we said each pharyngeal arch is going to have a nerve associated with it, a cartilage associated with it, an artery associated with it, muscle associated with it, right? Then you're going to have the cleft and the pouch. And this is what we're about to talk about. We're going to talk about this, the clefts and the pouches. So now when you look, okay, now, yes, okay, good, okay. We come back. We're gonna come back to this again. So you see how this little picture here is so important? Like you can neglect it, but it's really important. But remember we said, right, that there is the endoderm, and this is the endoderm right here, right? So if we take that slice, if we take that cross section, if we take that cross section like so, like this, we'll get a piece of that endoderm, right? Can you guys see this? We're gonna get the neural tube. Okay, maybe this is a little bit off. Maybe like this. All right, so we're gonna get the neural tube here. We get the neural tube here. We get the pharyngeal arches, and then we're also gonna get the endoderm. All right, and that's really important because the inside here, this is lined by your endoderm. And I just want to make sure you guys see where it's coming from. All right, so this here is your endoderm, like so. All right, so if that's my endoderm, then what do you think this is going to be? If the yellow is my endoderm, what do you think the outside is going to be? Okay, so that's ectoderm. Okay, so now if we now look at this, right? So if we look here, this is going to be your first pouch. This is going to be your pouch. Like this area here is going to be your pouch. So these areas are your pouches. You see that? These are your pouches. So this will be your first pouch, your second pouch, third pouch, your fourth pouch, fifth pouch. All right, those are your pouches. And then over here, these are your clefts. This is your cleft. Right. So this is where you have the pouch and the clefts coming in. All right. It's just the invaginations, depending on which side you're looking at it from. Right. So if you're looking at it from the side, if you're looking at it from the perspective of the endoderm, you're calling it a pouch. If you're looking at it from the perspective of the ectoderm, you're calling it a cleft. All right. So what happens is that there's gonna be structures that are gonna be forming within these pouches. You're gonna have structures. All right. Structures will form inside of here. So you're gonna have structures that are gonna be forming inside of these pouches. All right. Okay. Let's see. If there's anything significant for me to point out here. Boom, 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 boom. Okay. So before we even get into like the pouches and the clefts and what the clefts and the pouch forms and which one is doing what, I think it's just good to first of all look at the cartilage. So let's kind of look at the cartilage, and then the muscle, and then we'll look at the nerves. See, boom, boom. Okay. I might not have drawn this or depicted this in the best way, but okay. Okay, so here, and can you guys visualize what I'm doing here or what I have here? So this is kind of like someone's nose, so you can visualize. All right, I'm gonna have to demolish what I did here. So this is someone's head, right? And this is their nose. Whatever. Okay, so what we're looking at here, so right here, this is your Meckel's cartilage. All right. Then right here you're gonna have I believe it's the malleus, and this incus. Then you have your stapes. Right. Then here you're gonna have your styloid process. Then here you're gonna have your stylohyoid ligament, and this is gonna be your hyoid bone. Right. Then here is your thyroid, right? Cartilage. Then this is your cricothyroid, right? Cricothyroid. Okay. Let me actually just pull the picture up for you guys just to save time, because I'll have to draw. So let me just save some time. Okay. So when we're looking at that first arch, the cartilage of the first arch, so what is forming the cartilage? How do we get the cartilage of the first arch? How do we get the cartilage in those branchial arches? Neurocrest cells, right? The neurocrest cells are forming the cartilage. Okay, so inside that first pharyngeal arch, all right? These are this is the structures that the cartilage is going to give rise to, right? So it's going to give rise to this Meckel's cartilage, which is just this right here. It's going to give rise to your malleus and your incus. This is for your first pharyngeal arch, that first arch, that first bulge, right? Now for the second pharyngeal arch, it's going to be giving rise to your stapes right? Your styloid process, your stylohyoid ligament, and then the upper part of your hyoid bone. Now your third pharyngeal arch is going to give rise to the lower part of your hyoid bone. Your fourth pharyngeal arch is going to give rise to the upper 2/3 of your thyroid cartilage. And then the lower 1/3 of your thyroid cartilage and the cricothyroid cartilage is going to be derived from your sixth arch. It's getting a little bit confusing. Okay, sixth arch. Do you guys see where these cartilages are coming from and what's giving rise to what? Do you guys see it? No? Are you guys lost? Are you guys lost? No? Yeah, I'm just making sure. I just want to make sure you guys are following. Okay, so all right, so now we're going to consider everything together. So we're going to just consider everything together. So we'll just try to just quickly make a table. So let's just say this here we have the arches or whatever. And here let's say we're gonna have the cartilage. Well, we don't have to talk about the cartilage because we just talked about it. So let's just say this is the first arch, second arch, third arch, fourth arch. Now we don't have a fifth arch. All right, we don't have a fifth arch. So sixth arch. All right. So we're not going to talk about the cartilage because we just talked about it. But I guess we can just say it again, just for the just to emphasize what we said. Okay, so for the first arch, we said is giving rise to what? You guys remember? So the first arch is giving rise to malleus incus. What else? Meckel's cartilage. So that's the first arch. How about the second arch? Stapes, styloid process, stylohyoid ligament, and there's one more. And anterior part of your hyoid bone. Okay. And how about for the third arch? How about the third arch? Okay. So the lower part of your hyoid bone. How about the fourth arch? Okay, so upper 2/3 of your thyroid cartilage. And how about the sixth arch? Perfect, that's right. So this is where the cartilage is coming from, right? Now, in terms of the nerves, all right. So the first arch is going to be associated with your trigeminal, right? Which is cranial nerve 5. Your second arch is going to be associated with your facial nerve, which is cranial nerve 7. The third arch is going to be associated with your glossopharyngeal nerve, which is cranial nerve 9. Then these two guys here are going to be your vagus. So your vagus. So this is cranial nerve 10. All right. So I'm gonna ask you guys a lot of questions on these. So you guys try to remember this. So I can pull up any question. I can pull up a lot of questions out of this table.
Is that manual?
Which one? Oh, dang. I'm sorry. It's Roman numerals. We don't use them anymore. We don't use them anymore, you know. I would just write 9 but I don't know why we still use them.
don't want us to write one and one and say
I just try to make our lives harder. Okay, so so we talked about the cartilage, we talked about the nerve. Then the muscle. So the muscle associated with each arch. So when we're looking at the first arch, the muscle associated with the first arch, these are your muscles of mastification. Alright, so like your masseter, those other ones. Muscles of mastification for your first pharyngeal arch. And for your second one is your facial muscle, muscles of facial expression. Right. This is for your second arch. So your second arch muscle is the muscles of facial expression. Then for your third arch, it's going to be your it's just one muscle, stylopharyngeus muscle. Alright. Then for your fourth arch, it's going to be your pharyngeal muscles. Alright, and then the sixth one, it might be one or two other additional to it. Then the sixth one is the intrinsic muscles of your larynx. Oh dang, that's bad. Okay, so that's that for the muscles. So the muscles, so cartilage, nerves, muscles, and then arteries. Okay, so we are not going to consider the arteries, right? Because it was not covered in this lecture. Alright. Okay, so I'm going to ask you guys, okay, so which muscle is associated with your sixth arch? What muscle are we looking at? Intrinsic muscles of the larynx. Okay, so what nerve is for the, okay, so, actually, let me just, okay, so, 4, 2, 1. Okay, so if we're looking at the first pharyngeal arch, alright, what nerve is associated with it? Trigeminal, okay. Actually, let me write it, I'm write all of them out. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so if I'm looking at if I'm looking at my fourth arch, what muscle is it giving rise to? What muscle is the fourth arch giving rise to? Pharyngeal, right? So the pharyngeal muscles, right? So what nerve is associated with the fourth arch? 10, vagus. 4, 6, vagus. 4, 6, vagus, right? 4 and 6. 4 and 6. These are the same. 4 and 6 for the nerve. Right? 4 and 6 is vagus. Okay, so what muscle is associated with your second arch? Muscles of facial expression. What cranial nerve is that? Cranial nerve 7. What cranial nerve is associated with the fourth arch? Vagus. How about for 5? Oh, that's right. Oh my goodness, I feel so dumb. I was not testing you guys. I honestly just put it. It's just, this stuff happens. Dude, this stuff happens. I don't know. It's like I wanted to put 6, but I put 5.
You were testing us. I get it.
No. Nah, man, that was a mistake, man. I'm sorry. Okay, sorry. Oh my goodness. Alright, whatever. Okay, so 6. So what's the this is a nerve for 6. Okay. What? Okay, vagus. So how about
Do we need to know like the branches of that?
You probably. I mean, I did this just because I just want to summarize everything. So you should. Yeah, you should know. How about for the nerve for the third arch? That's right, glossopharyngeal. So what muscle is the third arch forming for us? Stylopharyngeus, right? What muscle is the first arch forming for us? Massification. What nerve is associated with that? Okay, 5. So trigeminal. Okay, so what bones or what cartilages, what structures do the cartilages of the first arch give rise to? Malleus. So malleus, incus, Meckel's cartilage. Malleus, incus, and Meckel's cartilage. How about the sixth arch? What structures are the cartilages going to give rise to? Okay. So the cricothyroid and the bottom 1/3 of your thyroid cartilage. Cool. Okay, so this is about it for the structures that these arches are going to give rise to. The only last thing to cover is just these clefts, the pouches and the clefts. And then once we get through the pouches and the clefts, then yeah, that's about it. So let's see.
Oh, I mean, you know what I meant.
That story. That story of someone writing an exam and she was
So none of those
confused.
other windows can
What happened?
open.
What happened?
Want it closed? Trying to open.
Okay, so I'm taking a cross section through here. All right, I'm taking a. Well, I guess I'm kind of blowing this up a little bit. So this right here. So visualizing this right here to be this right here. Right. So on the outside of this, what would this be? Okay, so it would be the cleft, but I was trying to go for the ectoderm, but that's still right. Ectoderm. And then how about over here? Okay, so that's endoderm. So remember, this is going to be your first arch, second, third, fourth, and then your fifth, right? Oh, that's right, 6. Thank you. Don't do that on the exam, though. I mean, you can do it here, but just don't do it on the exam. You know, so just look over your exam. Okay, so here. So this is going to be your. We're just going to call this P1, pouch 1, and we'll call this P2, pouch 2, P3, pouch 3, P4, pouch 4, and then P5. This first pouch here is going to give rise to what do you call this? Your inner ear. It's going to give rise to your inner ear, like the inner ear cavity.
Is it the one she said that connects to the back of the throat or something like that? Eustachian?
Eustachian tube, yeah. That's right, yeah. So if I'm not wrong, okay, let me see. Trying to see the best way to depict this. Okay, so
She says that's why because it's shorter in kids, that's why they keep having ear infection.
thought it was because it's more horizontal.
And shorter.
Oh, okay. That would make sense.
Okay, so you guys can kind of visualize this, right? So, if I'm not wrong, so from what I can remember from anatomy lab, so the eustachian tube actually connects like your oral mouth cavity to like your inner ear. So this right here will be like the eustachian tube. So here. So here. I probably have the spelling wrong, but eustachian tube. So it will be connecting like that inner ear to like your like your throat kind of mouth area, and I think the purpose of it is to like relieve. I don't know if it's for balance or pressure. I can't remember if it's pressure or balance something.
You don't want to plane it and collapse so beyond like upper.
I can't remember. It's probably either pressure or balance or something like that. So the P1 pouch, the first pouch, is giving rise to that your inner ear, and then the cleft is actually giving rise to your external auditory auditory meatus. That's what that. So this would be your C1, cleft 1, right? C2, cleft 2, C3, cleft 3, C4, cleft 4. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
So when it's doing the external auditory meatus, is it doing like the bony part of it, or like the epithelium is covering the bone?
Yeah, from just a lecture, just reading the slides, it just stated like the inner ear kind of. It just talked about the inner ear cavity, not really perhaps the structures in there, or I'm not sure exactly, but for sure on the slides it has like inner ear cavity. I'm not sure if it forms like the bony part of it or like the epithelium of it. Cool.
There's a P5. Is there a C5?
C5. There might be a C5. There might be a C5 from what I saw from the slides. I don't think they went up to C5. Let's see. Yeah, so I mean, from what I see from the slides, they didn't really have a C5. They didn't really have a C5. But yeah. All right, so maybe just spend maybe like 5 more minutes on this, and then we'll call it a day. So just by looking at this, so you can kind of see what these other structures are giving rise to. It should be common sense after this. So here is a primitive tympanic cavity, right? So like the inner ear cavity, external auditory meatus.
Is that the eardrum or something like that? I remember saying something about eardrum somewhere.
Well, the eardrum will probably be here somewhere in between here, right? Probably be in between there. Right? Okay, so the second the second pouch. The second pouch is going to give rise to your palatine tonsil. All right. Your third pouch is going to give rise to your thymus and your parathyroid gland. Do you guys know where the parathyroid gland is? No? Do you guys know where the parathyroid gland is?
Yeah, but is with the
Where?
with the thyroid one.
Where in the thyroid gland is it?
And the inferior posterior part.
Okay. Well, it's actually on both, inferior, superior. So if this is your neck, here, like so. And let's say this is your thyroid gland. Say this is your thyroid gland. If you looked at the back of your thyroid gland, you would actually see something like this. So you see something like this. You see like 4 circles on there. So these little circles on here, this is your parathyroid gland. So notice it's on the back of your thyroid gland. Alright, so this is like a posterior view of your thyroid gland. It is like anterior view, it's posterior view. This is parathyroid gland. Do you guys know where the thymus is? You guys know where the thymus is? So where's the thymus? Okay, yeah. Hmm? Yeah, it's behind the sternum. It's behind the sternum. Sternum area, upper sternum area. Okay, so that's what the third pouch is giving rise to. Alright? And then your fourth pouch is gonna give rise also to your parathyroid gland, but the superior part. And then this multimodal body. Alright. Okay, so that's that for your
When are we gonna go about learning
pouch. Yeah. So this is actually it forms the C cells of your thyroid gland. Yeah, it's on the slide. It's on the slide.
You said something about some inferior one being superior and some. Who was that?
Yeah. Superior becoming.
I think it was one of the slides that
That actually was from the
Oh, yeah.
inferior parathyroid, but 4 was from the superior. Like it's not a mistake, they just migrated.
Okay. So so I want to keep you guys here forever. So so this is the thing. What's gonna happen here? So this first cleft we said is gonna form that external auditory meatus. So but what happens is that this mesenchyme, the mesenchyme around here, will actually like grow, and then it will actually like blunt out. It will blunt out all the other clefts. It will blunt out all the other clefts. So that's why you're not seeing, well, this is the second cleft, but look where it's at. It's in here. And this is the third cleft. Instead of it being outside, it's all the way in here, right? And then this is the fourth cleft. So all the clefts are now like inward because there's like growth of this like area over here. So you get this blunting out of all these clefts, right? And then, so it's going to be inside here. And what happens is that over time, right, these membranes confuse, and then you'll be left with the cervical cyst, cervical sinus, right? Now, if you don't get this fusion occurring here, you're going to be left with the cervical cysts. But it sometimes becomes a cyst. When this remains open, right, then that's how you're getting that cyst. Right, you see, right, cervical cyst. So it's like that opening, right? Right, you see it, right? So the cyst is forming as a consequence of improper fusion here, right? Right? Improper fusion at this point.
Why is it making multiple cysts?
That's a good question. I'm not exactly sure why it's making multiple cysts. It could be, I don't know. That's a good question. Why is it making multiple cysts? Anyone have any ideas? Any ideas? It's just maybe.
she probably talked about it in the lecture.
Hmm?
She probably, you did listen to it? Or I think you said
I
something.
listened to the mountains and some multiple.
Okay. So that's that with your brachial fistulas, right? So do you guys see how these fistulas are coming about? Do you guys see how the fistulas are coming about? Yes? The cyst? This?
Is this
Yeah,
here?
yeah.
Oh, that's a fish.
So just an open cyst. Like a slit.
Yeah, I guess you could see it that way. Yeah. So I guess the fistula maybe is talking more so about maybe looking at it from the outside. And then the cyst is more like this area over here. So it's like cyst over here, but then when you're looking at it over here, it's like fistula. But I guess it's referring to the same thing. Then the last final thing is just the thyroid, right? The thyroid gland. So this thyroid gland is actually going to be developing, right? It's going to be developing as part of, well, it's going to be developing on the floor of the pharyngeal, of this pharyngeal area of pharynx, pharyngeal area. And what happens is that where it's developing, it will actually migrate down, right, into its location, the location where it's at, like so. And so this pathway that it takes to migrate down. All right, let me see if I can this. Okay, so that pathway is called the thyroglossal duct. All right, that pathway is called the thyroglossal duct. It's just the pathway that this thyroid, this precursor thyroid gland here, is taking to migrate down to its usual position, right? So what happens once all this tissue migrates down? Then it's going to leave a remnant, and that remnant is known as your foramen cecum. So this right here, the foramen cecum is where that thyroid gland originated from, and then migrated, like so, into its appropriate area. All right. So, but there can be problems with this because, number one, the thyroid gland might not migrate, or if it does migrate, it might only, part of it might migrate, part of it might remain, or you can actually have, like, you can have this thyroglossal duct actually remaining there. All right, so that's how you can have these thyroglossal cysts coming about. All right. Because of the improper migration of that thyroid gland, right? You guys see that? I think that's about it. That's about it. That's a lecture for that's a lecture. All right.